So different objectives a firm could take could be, firstly, profit maximisation, trying to make as much profit as possible. Secondly, it could be trying to maximise sales, sell as much of a good and service as possible. And closely related to sales maximisation is the objective of trying to increase market share. And again, very similar, could be revenue maximisation, where you try to get your maximum revenue that you can. Away from this, other objectives could include some concept of corporate responsibility, where a firm prioritises other stakeholders, like the environment, like workers, and so it makes less profit, but considers the wider community, like cooperatives. Also, we could get a situation of profit satisficing, where firms, the owners want to maximise profit, but the managers and workers want to just have a good time at work, make enough profit to keep the owners happy, but then satisfy their own objectives. And finally, we could look at the behavioural economics, which says there's a wide range of motives that influence how people and owners of firms operate. So just to go into more detail, if we take profit maximisation, this is a kind of an assumption of classical economics, that entrepreneurs set up business to make as much profit. And you can understand why we may come to this conclusion, because higher profit means the owners will benefit from either more dividends, they can pay themselves higher wages, they can use money to invest in research and development, and high profit can be saved in case there's a downturn. So there are many understandable reasons for profit maximisation. But in the real world, it's quite likely that some firms at least will be more concerned about increasing market share, maximising sales, and trying to become a dominant firm, even if it means less profit, at least in the short term. So, for example, Amazon, for quite a few years, their stated aim was market penetration, trying to get more market share, and they were quite happy to run at zero profit. And they were telling their investors that this is our goal is not to maximise profits in the short term, but to really dominate the market. Now, of course, when you have Amazon aiming at market share, you could say it's just a very clever way of long-term profit maximisation, because now Amazon has that market penetration. Now that it has people used to buying things online from Amazon, they're in a position to really become a very, very profitable firm. So in some respects, increasing market share can be a way to long-term profit maximisation. And all the old retail giants who were maximising short-term profit are now looking at Amazon and think we missed a trick to really dominate online sales. But also, it may be that a firm wishes to increase market share for other reasons, because it may be like a newspaper that just wants to have influence in society. So therefore, maximising profit isn't their objective so much as selling as many papers as possible to share their political message. And also, if you look at the motives of owners of firms, it could be many different things that motivate them. So, for example, you could get a drug company interested in saving lives, so therefore it sells its products as cheaply as possible, as widely as possible. And if you look at the COVID vaccine, AstraZeneca vaccine has been distributed at close to zero profit to maximise uptake around the world, whereas the Moderna vaccine has been different objective. They're trying to make profit from the vaccine, and the sales to developing world are much lower than other vaccines. So there you have two companies with different objectives. And Moderna may claim we need to profit maximise to be able to fund future research. And AstraZeneca may say, well, this is such a big priority in the world at the moment that we'd rather think of a greater good than our profit line. Profit satisficing, as I briefly mentioned, is when workers and owners have different objectives. So you get a job at McDonald's, you're not concerned about maximizing profit for the shareholders. You're thinking about, you want to get a sense of fulfillment at work, and also you want to get paid, but you don't want to work too hard. You want to have a good time with your friends. So this is how, in the real world, objectives depend on whether the workers and managers kind of share the ethos of a company. Increasingly, some firms at least are more interested in these wider non-economic motivations. So for example, you may get cooperative businesses which don't aim for profit, but to simply share the proceeds of the business to workers, suppliers, people in the community. And so this is a very different setup. Or you may get a business which is concerned with a different ethos. They don't believe in the capitalist ideal of maximizing profits, but they feel that work should be an extension of, say, spirituality or the environmental concerns. So you may get firms set up which don't test on animals, don't test on products which damage the environment. And even if this makes less profit, that the leaving a legacy for the environment is more important to them. In the real world, people have many conflicting motivations which may influence how a business works. So for example, whilst profit and financial gain is definitely one aspect, we can also be motivated by prestige. So just working for a big company, which gives us a certain social status, may be a driving factor. And that may push some firms into maximizing market share rather than profit. But also there's a sense of altruism that may influence some businesses. So for example, firms want to sponsor charitable projects or give some money away. But again, a cynical view might be to say, well, when firms have all these environmental objectives and suggesting they're giving money to charity, you could cynically say, well, this is just a clever way to increase their brand, and it's fairly minor share of their profit, but by making a big deal of their charitable and environmental message, they're just trying to get more consumers, and that we have to look closely to see whether it's a very real and tangible difference they're making, or whether it's just kind of surface looking at the, it's easy to say we're concerned about the environment, but what does a firm actually do? Finally, you can show this diagrammatically. So this is a diagram with different objectives. You've got profit maximization, where MR equals MC, high prices. Sales maximization, where the highest sales while still making normal profit. So you would sell at a price where AR equals AC. And revenue maximization, where MR equals 0. So that's for the economic students. But it's interesting to look at how firms operating in the world and thinking, what are their objectives? What are their driving forces? And I think it's fair to say that many of the big multinationals, profit is really very important because they're answerable to shareholders, and shareholders generally want more dividends and profit. But to get there, they may well use targeting market share and making lower profits in the short term. But as well as these two big factors, profit and market share, there are other things influencing firms, such as the environment and wider social issues.